Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Mavidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace. Peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. We're studying Swami Prabhavananda's book, Realizing God. This is his talk on mysticism, or mystic consciousness, or mystic visions. And we're well along in the talk. Before we start, are there any questions or comments? Anything like that you'd like to offer, or anything that you'd like to ask before we begin reading and commenting on the text? All right. Can you really practice what is called humanism without love for God? It is not possible. You become egoistic if all you do is to do good. Mysticism is beyond all feelings, emotions, ecstasies. Now, we have to be careful. Visions are not the same, and transcendental consciousness is not the same as ecstasy. Ecstasy is a wonderful thing. Bliss is a wonderful thing, as we'll hear. But it is not. It is just a signpost that you're on the right road. So that is why the word ecstasies is included in the sentence. Naturally, I lost my place. Mysticism is beyond all feelings, emotions, ecstasy. My master, by that he means Swami Prabhavananda or Raja Maharaj, my master said at one time, bliss, yes, but you have to go beyond that also. Now, bliss is so soothing and comforting. It's easy to think, oh, I have arrived. This is what is being said by the Swami. No, it is just an indication that you are making progress. What that is, of course, is indefinable, inexpressible. By that he means what it is that when you go beyond that. What that is of course indefinable, inexpressible. And coming back after that highest samadhi, one may continue to live, but then considers the world a mirage. The appearance is there, but the eye has changed. It is the eye of the spirit only. Shankara says, with physical eyes, what would you see but matter? And with the eye of spirit, what would you see but spirit, Brahman? In other words, you either see everything as matter when you are in ignorance, or you see nothing but God. Now, Sri Ramakrishna says there's another way of being with this. and in which you see God as the universe, all creation, all beings, and the 24 cosmic principles, see it all as God. And that can be given to you without you having to achieve this highest samadhi. He says, Mother can give you that gift. So don't despair that without nirvikalpa samadhi, you will never see the world of spirit in the sense that the Swami is talking about. So I just want to interject that so that there isn't this sense that, oh, well, what hope is there for me? The hope is there, as Christ said, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all else shall be added unto you. And that includes this kind of experience of seeing the world, all righteousness and all wisdom. Swami Vivekananda said, all is not, God is in. God is. Swami Vivekananda said, all is not, God is. That doesn't mean that the all is not God. It simply means when we're just seeing the all and not seeing God, then we're still in ignorance. God is, then we see there's the possibility of seeing all as God. The world disappears completely. Now, this is in that samadhi. Why does the world disappear completely? Because there's no mind, no organs of perception to perceive it. What is experienced, what is realized, experienced is even the wrong word. What is realized is beyond all expression, the peace that passeth all understanding. Then you realize that Brahman is above, Brahman is below, Brahman is to the right, Brahman is to the left, Brahman is within, and Brahman is without. All this is Brahman. So that's the end of the talk on mysticism, mystic consciousness, and mystic visions. Is there anything that anyone would like to add from their own wisdom or experience? Or anything that you would like to ask, or any concern you'd like to raise about what has been said in the entirety of this talk? Was a long piece of text because that's the way Edith Tipple assembled it from the many talks that the Swami gave on this subject. So there's been a lot there. Anything at all that you would like to comment on or ask?
Shankara, this is Haima.
Yes, Haima?
I want to clarify this. This means we have to go beyond the three modes, which is sattva, rajo, tamo guna, all the three gunas. Beyond the gunas, that is when people transcend, truly see the Brahman. Is that right?
Yes. And then what happens is you see all that is the product of the gunas as also Brahman. But the name for it in that form of manifestation, various names are there: Shakti, Jagat, all of these names that we use to express that which is, apparent to us. But as the Swami said, your eye changes once you have this experience of the divine. And as I've said, there are two ways that this is achieved. One, through spiritual practice, as Patanjali says, you get to the end of self-effort and something happens to you, and you slip into a profound meditation, samadhi, and liberation. The other is that by sincere prayer to Mother, as Sri Ramakrishna says, you can ask her to reveal to you all of this. Of course, you must be very sincere, very persistent, and you must have purified yourself to the point where you can receive what is given. But that doesn't mean you won't receive anything. You will receive what you're capable of receiving, and that each step of the way will be very welcome to you. At some point, yes, there is the denial of everything that is the gunas. This is what we'll talk about tomorrow, setting aside the mirror, where you just say everything that is reflected in the mirror of my awareness is not Brahman. So neti.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
That includes all of the products of the gunas, of course.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Anything else, dears?
Hari Om.
Hari Om, Balakrishna ji.
Shankaraji. I think this one for a long time, because in one of the letters, Swami Vivekananda said this. I never said this because somebody was asking, everything is God.
Hold on just a minute. I tried to inhale some tea. Excuse me for interrupting. Okay, go ahead, please.
So I remember that letters, what he wrote to one of the American devotees. He wrote, you said, all is God. Then Swami says, no, I never said that. It is, not all is not God is. That is what it is. And I had a lot of time to understand this one for a long time until, the gospel. And Sri Ramakrishna met Vidyasagar. And
Yes.
place because it is an appearance. There is no reality for everything what we see here, because appearance has no existence at all. And this is what he gives the example of a mirage and the desert. The mirage water has no capacity to wet even a particle of sand, because there are two levels. The mirage water has one level, whereas the God is another level. That is why an appearance has nothing. Until that time, I did not understand this, the meaning, exact meaning of all is not, God is. Thank you.
Thank you, Balaji. Very well said. Thank you. Anyone else?
Brother Shankara?
Yes.
Hello. It reminded me of, the consistent refrain in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Only Brahman is real, all else is illusory.
Mm-hmm. But then he also says, at a certain stage, either through spiritual practice or through Mother's grace, one achieves vijnana, in
Yes.
which case one sees all, both the manifestation and the unmanifest, as Brahman. But in the manifest form, it's Shakti or Kali or Jagat or whatever it is that suits your fancy. But again, none of this is material to us. None of this will make any sense to us unless we are practicing, unless we are reading and assimilating, not just reading for knowing what's said there, but assimilating what's said. So when the master says, God alone is real, all else is illusory, well, there are levels behind that. And they're all reflected in the gospel. They're all reflected in other scriptures as well. And so one of Swami Prabhavananda's favorite Upanishad was the Svetasvatara Upanishad, because the Vijnana is so beautifully expressed in that Upanishad. So anyone who wants to know, there is a wonderful, a truly wonderful translation and commentary with a great introduction of background material by one of Swami Prabhavananda's disciples, Devadatta Kali. Devadatta Kali. It's the Svetasvatara Upanishad. You just look that up online. Just put in Svetasvatara Upanishad and look for the book by Devadatta Kali. If you want to pursue that, it is an absolutely amazing book, because Devadatta Kali was not only a very profound devotee, and he was also a great scholar. And so his giving a background for how can God be both manifest and unmanifest? That's in the background statement and the background information. And then he goes on to translate and comment on the Svetasvatara. It's an amazing book. It will really illumine a lot of what we just read and heard in this talk on mystic consciousness.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, Vijay.
Hari Om.
Hari Om yourself.
A while ago, you made a very powerful statement. We receive what we are capable of. And this one statement is demanding, powerful, and so inclusive. And I find it kind of limiting myself. In other words, I find myself very dissatisfied with myself when I say I'll receive what I'm capable of receiving, because I'm only working with my mind, and the state of my mind.
No, Vijay, you're not just working with your mind. We know our mind the best, but the chitta is not the mind. The mind stuff is not the left brain awareness. It's far more. And as we do our spiritual practices, the chitta becomes purified. This is what is meant by Chaitanya when he says, chant the name of the Lord and his glory unceasingly, that the mirror of the heart may be wiped clean, and quench that mighty forest fire, worldly lust, raging furiously within. If we do our spiritual practices, particularly according to what we were told to do by our teachers, if we're fortunate enough to have received Diksha, that we will receive some great and powerful tools. They purify the chitta. They purify the mind stuff. And as that purification goes on, what is already resident within you, because the entirety of universe and all of knowledge, all of Satchidananda is resident within you. At first, it starts as a trickle, then as a stream, then as an artesian outburst, like an artesian well uncapped. This is what's meant by receiving what you're capable of receiving. As pure as we are, that's what we are able to receive. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's no reason to be dissatisfied. Dissatisfaction is just another way to be distracted. Dissatisfaction, disappointment, impatience, all of these things are just a way to distract ourselves. No, just focus on the practice. Focus on the practice and practice santosha. What is in the niyamas so powerfully? Santosha, practice contentment. I am exactly where I belong. I am exactly where the manifestation and myself cooperate to be. So no reason to be dissatisfied.
I felt myself that I did not articulate myself well a while ago. When I repeat my mantra, I consciously try to increase the intensity with which I am repeating. And I remember your words when you told me that my mantra has a power in it. And I remind myself at that time about that power of Sri Ramakrishna Ji Thakur. And although, again, I'm using the word unfortunately, that is not preferred by you, although I find myself limited, and yet I find that Thakur is so kind to me, so repeatedly kind to me, that I'm able to, that he lets me perceive his presence in very minute, small things all the time. And then I say to myself, how is it that on one hand, in my mantra, I'm finding myself limited in my connection, and I'm trying to increase physically the intensity with which I repeat my mantra. And I ask myself then, and I'm asking you the question, is it right to consciously increase the intensity, or am I making it more physical thereby?
This is a very difficult question to answer, Vijay, because each of us is so different. Actually, each of us is unique. So if you are forcing, if there's any feeling of forcing, pushing, that's inauspicious. It isn't that it's wrong. It's just inauspicious, because that just creates a counter reaction. When we push, there's a pushback. So it's very difficult to say exactly how you should do your mantra, but it should be comfortably. It should be comfortably. Just say the mantra comfortably. When your mind wanders, then you gently bring it back, restart the mantra, and when the mind wanders again, gently bring it back. until finally those times come when the mantra goes on sweetly and comfortably, and you are unaware of anything other than the living presence that is represented by the mantra. But anytime we try to intellectually decide how we should go about our practice, we're probably treading on inauspicious ground. That's as close as I can come to answering your question.
You have answered it extremely well, and it's very helpful to me what I heard from you, especially about not forcing. And I believe that by increasing my intensity at that time, I'm kind of forcing. It's not natural anymore.
It's comfortable. It should be comfortable.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Before when we're finished with this discussion, and it can take as long as we like, we'll start on the next talk. But is there anything else from anyone from your own?
Can I ask you a question, Shankaraji?
Of course, dear.
Just this is a follow-up on Vijay's thing, because my understanding and how I, try to practice this, because the way I look at it is whether we are trying to do it forcibly or intensively or whatever it is, it's all within our mind level only. That is why I try to follow. I'm a servant of Sri Ramakrishna. Whatever happens, happens. I just continue my thing. This is how, this way I don't differentiate whether I'm doing one way or the other. Everything is given to him. I don't know whether that's the right attitude or not.
Of course, it's the right attitude. Always, if we're offering ourselves and what we're doing, that is the auspicious way to approach spiritual practice. It's all offered in the cause of our purification, our growth, our expansion. What are we doing? We're doing away with our limitations. We're increasing our potential for happiness, real happiness. that underlying current of happiness that is there. Now, intensity, as discussed by Patanjali, does not mean fierceness, does not mean pushing. It means regularity. It means being very intentional about the regularity and dependability of your practice. That's what's meant by intensity, as Patanjali discusses it. It doesn't mean pushing hard at it. As I said, just in the nature of even the laws of thermodynamics, any action creates an equal and opposite reaction. So if you are pushing, there will be a pushback. So we don't push. We do much more as the way you described it. Well, does that make sense?
Yes, it helps my progress. Yes, definitely.
Well, we need to keep the niyamas in mind. The Patanjali's niyamas are such a sweet and thorough summary of the way forward. What it is that we need to actually do to replace that which we have set aside when we restrain ourselves according to the yamas. If we restrain ourselves according to the yamas, what do we replace that with? Well, Patanjali's description and discussion of the niyamas, and particularly the great commentators on that, which are, in my opinion, Swami Vivekananda and Swami Prabhavananda, from the Ramakrishna Vedanta tradition. They illuminate what it is that it is auspicious for us to do that surrounds the particular practice that is our daily routine. But the niyamas describe your life, what your life is like, what your life should contain. And slowly, the practice and the life become one thing. I'm not studying the scriptures. The scriptures are my experience. This is what, of course, was said by Gandhi about Sri Ramakrishna. Mahatma Gandhi said of Sri Ramakrishna, if you want to understand the Vedas, study the life of Sri Ramakrishna. He lived them. Well, we too can live the scriptures, and I've set aside just this little tiny portion in the niyamas as a way to really practice the purification of the citta. Which allows us to see more and more, understand more and more, and be more and more of the truth that is the nature of our being. Anything else from anyone? Okay. The next talk is titled Silence. Now, for any of you who read in particularly the poetic expressions of spirituality, you'll know that silence, the language of God is silence. Meister Eckhart says there is a great silence within you that calls to you. When your mind finds that great silence, it's transformative. So silence is, this again is let us sit at the Swami's knee and listen to him talk about silence. The whole truth of religion and spiritual life is in the one word silence. Only in silence can the truth of God be known. And only in silence can the teacher teach. Now that may seem paradoxical. Here he is making a talk. The Swami is talking. This is a transcription of what he's saying. He's saying only in silence can the teacher teach. What he means is that the deep understanding that can come from listening to him is being transmitted in the silence underneath the talking. The talking is only to hold your attention and share with you some practices and principles. But the teaching goes on in that undercurrent. that undercurrent of silence. It's transmitted from one illumined soul to those who are seeking purification and illumination. That's what he means by that. Only in silence can the truth of God be known, and only in silence can the teacher teach. We may be silent, but how to still, we may be silent, but how to still the noises inside is the whole of religion. What a statement. We may be silent, but how to still the noises inside is the whole of religion. And it's what we talk about here in all of the classes, all of the talks. Everything we study are the practices and principles of how to still the noises inside that distract us from the truth that is ever present and self-evident. It is an experience that transforms your whole life and beings and brings. It is an experience that transforms your whole life and brings complete fulfillment inside. You may experience this thing or that thing. You may experience this thing or that thing and perhaps gain knowledge. But the experience of God is something that transforms your whole life and being. Now, when the Swami says that, he means it very literally. It actually transforms every cell in your body. It transforms every neuron in your nervous system. For some, it may happen in a moment. Very rare, the Swami told us. For most, it happens slowly and slowly. You have been one thing, you begin to do these practices that create a different vibration in your immediate space. That vibration, as we'll talk about tomorrow, that vibration changes. You are a being made of vibration. The vibration that you are changes, and so every cell in your body changes. That's what the Swami means, transforms your whole life and being. It isn't an intellectual thing. Yes, the intellect also changes, purifies, reflects more of the truth. But let us take these words very seriously. I'll read them again. You may experience this thing or that thing, and perhaps gain knowledge. But the experience of God, remember, silence, but the experience of God is something that transforms your whole life and being. In the Upanishads, we read, I have known that which is beyond all darkness. Then the seer says that you also have to experience that in order to reach immortal bliss. Sri Ramakrishna said, you hear about God, then you see God, then you talk to Him, you become intimate with Him, and you realize your union with Him. These are the stages. Sri Ramakrishna said, you hear about God, and some of us, hearing about God, are attracted. We hear about it in various ways that appeals to our unique being. You hear about God, then you see God. Now, the interval between hearing about God and being attracted and seeing God may seem like a long time to us. It'll be decades. For most of us, it will be decades. But the process and what happens during the process, particularly after 2 or 3 or 4 years, you'll notice, oh, I'm so glad I started this process. You hear about God, then you see God, then you talk to Him. You become intimate with Him, and you realize your union with Him. This union has to be achieved in this life. When the Swami says it has to be achieved in this life, remember, he's talking to people who have come to hear him tell them what they must do. This is not an assertion that you must do this. It is an invitation that if you are motivated, and you begin to feel truly that I've had enough of this. This short poem says it. Being, creating, doing, sharing. The joys of these are why we are here. When you are truly tired of this, just sign off and head for home. There has to be that weariness with the manifest. There has to be that weariness with the being, creating, doing, and sharing. And there has to be a chafing against the sense of limitation. I know I am more than this limited being, this cage of flesh and bone. I no longer want to be landlocked in this cage of flesh and bone. So then you sign off. You renounce that which has occupied your attention, occupied your time and your activities. Certain things remain necessary to do, no doubt. But as you do your spiritual practice, the nature of them changes for you. They're not the same anymore. They are something that you see going on in your presence as you become the witness, as you become the one who is observing the being, creating, doing, and sharing. No longer feeling that you are a participant, you have signed off. Now I'm going to leave it there for a moment and ask if there are any comments or questions about what's been said. All right. The Swami goes on to ask, what is the way? The light, God, is within each of us. But how do you find it? In the Gita we read, when the mind is under perfect control and freed from desires, he becomes absorbed in the Atman and nothing else. When the mind, I think he just left out the man, when a man's mind. When a mind is under perfect control and freed from desires, he becomes absorbed in the Atman and nothing else. You're not going to reach that state until you've signed off on desires. Your mind will not come under control as long as it continues to seek the things of the world and the things of the five senses. It simply cannot come under control as long as it runs after the world. You have to be truly tired of the world. Is it wrong not to be truly tired of the world? Of course not. Of course not. This world was brought into existence by the desire of the divine being for that experience of being, creating, doing, and sharing. As long as you're finding joy in that, enjoy yourself. As Sri Ramakrishna said, you come to the mango grove, eat the mangoes. But when you are truly tired of it, then you can free yourself from desires. And when you do, the mind can come under control and you become absorbed in the Atman and nothing else. You have to be completely absorbed in God, or, as Meister Eckhart said, there must be perfect stillness in the soul before God can whisper his words into it, before the light of God can shine in the soul and transform the soul into God. When the passions are still and worldly desires silenced, then the word of God can be heard in the soul. I'm going to read that again. Meister Eckhart said, there must be perfect stillness in the soul before God can whisper his words into it, before the light of God can shine in the soul and transform the soul into God. When the passions are stilled and worldly desires silenced, then the word of God can be heard in the soul. Now, it may seem paradoxical. I can't hear the word of God until I achieve this. And yet the word of God is the goal. No, the journey is the goal. You decide, I am truly tired of this. It's time to head for home. Then this begins. And as we go back to Sri Ramakrishna's, first you hear of God, then you see God, and then you get this conversation. You hear God and become intimate with him. And then finally you realize that there is nothing but God, and that's what you are also. That's exactly what Meister Eckhart is pointing to here. If we struggle and practice, it becomes easy. You see, the mind is like a lake. If the lake is waving and moving, a reflection is not perfect. You must somehow quiet the lake. We must calm the mind, have complete control over it. And this is possible only by controlling our passions and cravings. Only then is the glory of God, who is within, becomes revealed. This is a psychological principle. The consciousness of the Atman is there. That consciousness is God, blissful, immortal, eternal, and unchangeable by its very nature. When you are awake or asleep or dreaming, the background is that consciousness, God, always, always. You are never separate, never apart from God, not for one moment. But the consciousness is reflecting on the mind, which rises in the waves of craving and desiring all the time, so that the reflection is not complete or perfect. It is fragmented. And so it is not compelling. Why is this life of the world so compelling? Why is it so convincing? Because it is Brahman's dream. You are Brahman. You are dreaming this dream. As Vivekananda said, we are infinite dreamers, dreaming finite dreams. It's only when you genuinely question the limitations of the dream and grow weary of them that you begin to sense there, I am more than this. I am more than this. And that's when the fragmentation begins to end, when the fragments begin to come together and make that perfect mirror that Chaitanya talks about in his prayer. It comes together and it is wiped clean and becomes a perfect reflection. So any comments or questions on this? We're just about to come to the end of the hour, so if there's anything you would like to say to contribute from your own wisdom or experience, or any comment you'd like to make, any concern you'd like to raise, any question you'd like to ask, now is the time to share it with us. This is studying this together. So don't let the opportunity go past if there is something that you would like to ask or say.
Brother Shankara, this is
Yes,
Fred.
Fred.
Hi, greetings. Greetings to everybody in the class. Thanks for everyone's comments and wisdom. I wanted to ask a question. It may be a little off topic, but it's related. You mentioned the term transcendental consciousness. I've heard people say super consciousness. Is that the same as witness consciousness, or could you comment on how it's different?
The witness consciousness comes to an end with something called savikalpa samadhi. It is a much higher form of consciousness, no two ways about it. But it is still within time, space, and causation. There is an experience, that which is experienced, and an experiencer. Transcendental consciousness or super consciousness is when the experiencer disappears and there is only the experience. Now that is absolutely inexpressible in language. Why? Because there was no one there to make any language about it. And what was realized, which is actually the proper word for what happens in transcendental or superconsciousness, it is utterly transformative, as the Swami pointed out in the last talk. But it can't be spoken of because there was no one there to do what we do in order to speak of things, which is record the experience. Now, someone who's experienced Savikalpa Samadhi can tell you what was experienced. And it is very, very elevated indeed. And it is transformative. It is one of the things that completes the purification and transformation of the citta, of the mind stuff, of this whole physical being. But that is the end of the sixth step of the 8 steps or limbs of Patanjali's yoga. And it can be reached by any number of ways, not just Patanjali. But believe me, when disciples wanted to speak to Swami Prabhavananda about Nirvikalpa Samadhi, he would say to them, first achieve Savikalpa Samadhi, which is something you can achieve through self-effort. First achieve Savikalpa Samadhi, then we'll talk about Nirvikalpa. Does that get it, Fred?
Yeah, that clears that up for me. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, Nira.
So I believe only the divine incarnations or avatars like Thakur could go between the two levels of consciousness, between super consciousness and also Savikalpa Samadhi. He was able to go back and forth. Am I right?
Yes, as a matter of fact, he said there are thousands of levels of samadhi. But those are 2 generalized categories, yes. And he said only the incarnations and the Ishvara Kotis, people like Vivekananda, are able to do that, yes. The rest of us, what happens is, it's so, well, first of all, there's very little motivation to want to stay within the cage of flesh and bone once you've achieved this state of transcendental consciousness. And so Sri Ramakrishna and the scriptures and many commentators say that you're likely to stay only a maximum of 21 days. And what that's like, I can't begin to tell you. But many, having achieved that state of being, they never return to their body. They simply drop their body at the time of Nirvikalpa Samadhi.
I see.
But
And
Swami
did
Vivekananda,
any of the, sorry, the follow-up question, I was
Yeah.
not finished. Did any of the direct disciples also experience?
All of them. It was given
All
to
of them?
It was
I see.
given to them by Swami. It was given to them by Sri Ramakrishna, and he rescued them, so to speak, from losing their bodies. those who were not Ishwarakotis. Only 6 of the direct disciples were Ishwarakoti. But they all received that. And you can
Who were
see
they,
the
Brother
evidence.
Shankara?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just wondering who the 6 Ishwarakotis were.
Let's not go into that now. I'm not sure I'll remember their names correctly, dear. It's listed in the introduction to the gospel. You'll find it right there.
I may, Shankaraji.
Hang on just a minute.
Okay.
Neera had a follow-up question, and then Brahmadas had something. Brahmadas, you still there?
Yes. What does Ishvarakoti mean again?
It means one who comes with the Ishwara, one who is a servant and comes with the Ishwar. Ishwar is what incarnates as an incarnation, and the Ishwarakotis are those who come, who are able to come with him or her deliberately, and then leave again deliberately, as Vivekananda did, and as Yogananda did. Now, there was.
I was always confused about Ishwar Kotis and Jivan Muktas. Could you?
Oh,
explain?
Jivan Muktas, that's you and me, dear. If we achieve realization, and it's even Savikalpa Samadhi, then we become Jivan Mukta.
Oh, okay.
The Ishwarakotis are ever free souls.
Mhm.
They're never jivas, never.
I see. Okay.
Not from the dawn of creation.
Hmm.
They are created as ever free souls. They are never jiva.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else from anyone?
Yes, Shankaraji. Actually, I just wanted to, I remember, during the Kalpataru day, he gives it not only his direct disciples, one of the householder disciples, he also touches him, he gets that samadhi, and he goes home for almost like 3 days. He was in that samadhi, and he comes back and say, I cannot function. Please take this out.
Yes.
So he can give that one. And the other thing I really like is the last sentence. The consciousness, its reflection is not complete. That is where all our effort is to wipe clean the mirror of the mind.
Yes. To purify the chitta, to
Yes.
wipe clean the mirror of our awareness.
Yes.
And the thing about it is that most people, they look at it and they say, oh my goodness, can I do that? Yes, you can do that. And the first 3 or 4 years will be difficult. There's no getting around it. You have to be truly weary of the world. You have to be truly finished with the mangoes from the mango grove. To keep up your practice for 3 or 4 years. But at the end of that period, what you'll do is you'll look back and you'll say, oh my God, I'm so glad that I was prompted by the divine within me to do this, because life is different now. And as the years go by, it gets better and better and better. It doesn't mean that there's no pain and anguish. Every saint will tell you that there's plenty of pain and anguish and tears. I mean, if you read the Love Poems from God book and hear the testimony of these 12 saints from these various traditions around the world through the ages, plenty of anguish, plenty of tears, plenty of desperation. But there is also greater and greater wisdom and understanding and love and compassion and God knows life in the flesh is never easy. It isn't even easy for the incarnations. As Holy Mother says, you know, when the incarnation takes human form, they suffer all the liabilities of this cage of flesh and bone. Mother herself, Holy Mother, she had many physical afflictions and maladies over the course of her life, many emotional tragedies. But she never ceased being Holy Mother. So if we are truly tired of the being, creating, doing, and sharing, which is just a summary of what the good, the wonderful aspects of what we're here to do. When we're truly tired of this, then we find a way to sign off and head for home. And in the beginning, it is a struggle. And it never ceases being a struggle in some ways. Even for the Ishwarakotis, just look at the life of Vivekananda. Oh my God, you know, such pain and suffering. At the end of Vivekananda's life, Turiyananda found him in his room banging his head against the wall. Banging his head against the wall. It began to bleed. He banged his head so hard. And Turiyananda said to him, Swamiji, what is it? And Swamiji said, attachment, attachment. Among the people who had helped Swami Vivekananda in his American adventure was the Hale family. The Hale family had 2 daughters. They became, in a very real sense, Vivekananda's spiritual daughters. And of course, he wanted the highest for them and gave them the highest in what he had to offer. But both of them went a worldly way. And it wrung Swamiji's heart. It wrung Swamiji's heart because he was so attached to them emotionally. And that's why he was banging his head against the wall. Now, that happened. On the same day, Turiyananda, who was tasked with helping take care of Swami Vivekananda, he had been asked to wake him up from a nap at a certain time. He came into the room where Vivekananda, he had seen him before, lying on the bed. But when he came into the room to wake him up for the nap, Swamiji's body was not there. There were 12 Shiva Nataraj dancing in a ring, small. 12 Shiva Nataraj dancing in a ring. Of course, Turiyananda withdrew, came back a short time later, and there was Swamiji's sleeping body. And he woke him. It's not possible for us to understand these beings. It's not possible for us. We can only look at them and say, I'm so glad they're in our world to offer us what they offer. Anything else from anyone at the end here? All right, dears.
Where can I read about this one, Shankaraji? Is it in autobiography of Turiyananda, or is it with
I think it's in Nivedananda's book. It's been so long ago since I read it, Balakrishna.
Yes.
I can't tell you for sure. If you want to know, one of the experts in it's kind of immediately available to us, is Mahayogananda, also Atmarupananda. They know. What is the Toronto Swami's name? It escapes me right now. He's another Vivekananda expert. I may have heard that story from him, actually.
It's really wonderful.
In any event, I can tell you I didn't make it up, Krishna.
No. That's not my. No. I
No,
that.
I'm just.
No, I'm more interested to learn more about it. You know.
Yes.
One day I heard somebody was asking Turiyananda about this meditation and concentration.
Yes.
Somebody asked how long it takes to go into. It seems he answered to them, the minute I sit into meditation, I go into the samadhi. Like,
well, he is one of the Ishvara Kotis.
Yeah, that's why, reading some of those things inspires, that's the only reason I'm asking, not I'm talking even if
I was only kidding around, Balakrishna. I was only kidding around. I just don't recall for sure where I gleaned that.
Is it Kripa Moyananda?
Kripa Moyananda.
Yeah.
Kripa Moyananda is the one in
Toronto. Okay.
And I may have heard that story from him during a 6-day retreat in Rochester, New York. In any event, I either read it or heard it from one of the Swamis.
I have the book on, Sister Nivedita, How I Know My Teacher.
The master as I knew him.
Yes, I have it. Maybe I'll look into it.
Thank you. Was that Cindy who remembered Kripa Moyananda's name? Thank you.
Yes.
So anything else from anyone? All right.
Brother Shankara?
Yes.
Earlier you mentioned about the book by Devadatta Kaliji. What is the name of that book? If I go on to it.
Svetasvatara Upanishad.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And it's spelled SV. Sveta. It can also be spelled SW, as you know. So,
thank you.
Svetasvatara.
Actually, that is supposed to be one of the favorite Upanishads of Vivekananda also, right?
Yeah, his number one favorite was the Kata, but I'm sure he loved the Svetasvatara. It's so joyous. If you
Yes.
read it, it is just so joyous. This man is just, his name Svetasvatara means the one who owns white mules. It's not a name of a human being. It's a title, it's a description. But he just is overflowing with the joy and bliss of what he realized. And he says, thou art the woman, thou art the man, you art the young woman, thou art the man, thou art the old man tottering on his staff, thou art the red-eyed parrot, thou art the thundercloud. I mean, well, you talk about Vijnana. He got it in spades. He saw the divine everywhere he looked. And that little sequence that I just gave you a tiny portion of, it'll thrill you. It'll make the hair stand up on your arms. And that's why it was Swami Prabhavananda's, because Swami Prabhavananda was emotional that way. That's why he was so beloved by other emotional people, like all those actors and actresses. Anything else from anyone, dears? All right. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya. Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya. Mrityorma Amritangamaya. Abir Moiti. Dearly beloved, lead us from this realm of confusion and misunderstanding to thine abode of clarity and understanding. Lead us from darkness and ignorance to the brilliance of thy wisdom and love. Lead us from death to immortality. Light us through and through. Light us through and through. Light us through and through with thy everlasting, shining presence. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Peace, peace. Peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. And so it is true. Any final word from anyone? Okay, dears. Tomorrow morning we'll talk about the most difficult of the four paths for most of us. It takes a very strange and marvelous temperament to do it. The title of the talk is Setting Aside the Mirror. Setting aside the relative world awareness and insisting that Brahman alone is real. But it ain't like you think it is. So it's not that I'm a practitioner of it, anything but there's some wonderful things to say about it, and it is very interesting. The path of the Jnani, the path of the true Advaitist. So until tomorrow morning, for those of you who choose to follow along, any final word from anyone? All right, dears.
Thank you, Brother Shankara. Thanks, everybody.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. So good to be with you as always. Until next time, Jai Ma, Jai Ma, Jai Ma.